Okay, so we only have 25 minutes, and I'm going to go through what cloud native security is. So although this talk usually has a whole bunch of demos of Azure, we at 25 minutes, I did see I saw most of Mustafa's talk, and I have to say, I think he pulled 400 rabbits out of a hat doing that so fast in Azure. I was super impressed with him. Wow. So cloud native security. So I like to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I tell you what I told you. And then I tell you the thing. And so the idea is that you get it. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about cloud. We're going to talk about what cloud native means. And then we're going to talk about how we secure a cloud native and basically how we can do security in more innovative and exciting ways that we couldn't do it before clouds like Azure existed. And so I want to warn you a bit because I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I'm hoping that you're going to put some things into the chat to answer, to share. And I can't really interact with you as much as I'd like to, as much as I could in person, because then I can stare at you, and then I could also bribe you with maple candies to get to get answers out of you. But I'd really love it if you could share your answers in the chat as we go through this. So I'm going to tell you a bunch of the answers because, well, I mean, like when I teach this live, especially if it's at a meetup, I'm like, I've got all night, folks. I'll just sit here until you start sharing. But I don't have all night this time. So let's go. So this is me. I feel like Simon's video did like a way better job of explaining that I am a big nerd on the internet. And we do these slides as speakers. We do these slides so that you think that we are qualified to give our own talk. But I'm going to just assume you're like, I'm on Learn TV. I'm going to learn stuff. Let's go with Tanya. So let's learn some things. So what is cloud? Right. And so I have, so let's do the first, like the really dry, very formal definition of cloud. So this is the Wikipedia definition. So cloud computing is so let's go through this. I'm going to read it and then let's dissect it. So cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computer systems, resources, especially data storage and computing power without the direct active management of the user. So let's tear this apart, kind of suss it out. Because when someone reads me something like this, I'm like, that's too many abstract, very complex concepts. Let's dissect it a bit. So it's on demand. So this is so magical. I used to have to, when I was a dev, I would make a ticket and it would go to the operations team and then they would think about it. And then I'd usually have to get approval to get a server and this and that. And sometimes I'd have to go over and be like, hey, buddy, like, could you make my server like sometime this week, please? I really need this stuff. And I'm not proud of it, but I would bribe them with cookies, like a lot. There used to be this DBA, and if I wanted data things happening and I wasn't supposed to access the database myself, even though, programmers can usually get around that, I was like, Colin, I have Oreos. I will give you 4 if you will do this. And I have bribed so many people with cookies over my career, and a lot of homemade ones, but Oreos worked particularly well on Colin, the DBA. But the point is that you could just ask. I kid you not, like with Azure, all the clouds, you just put in the thing, you say, I'm going to pay, and then they just build you infrastructure. They give you IoT. They give you like whatever it is that you've asked for. And it takes like a couple minutes. It's even like short enough time that like I can't necessarily go get a coffee and come back. It's like too fast. And that's amazing. And so the other part that's really exciting is without direct active management by the user. And so I used to have to care for my servers, just like you would care for a pet. I mean, like you wouldn't give your servers food. That's not going to go well. And if you pet them, they don't usually make more noise. But definitely you'd have to care for them on a regular basis. You have to patch them. You have to make sure your configurations are okay. You have to just like maintain this thing and make sure it's okay. And on top of that, I'm like patching my app and fixing bugs and making little changes that my clients would ask for. And so you don't have to manage your infrastructure anymore most of the time because they just do this for you. They just create infrastructure for you. They will care for a lot of it. It's pretty exciting. And so what do we mean by all of this? Like, we mean that you have this shared responsibility, which we're going to talk about a bit later, but it means that basically Microsoft or whoever your provider is doing a bunch of the heavy lifting for you. And it's pretty exciting to be able to just like count on other people to help you be awesome. And so that's basically what we mean by cloud, is that they will provide all these things to you reliably, and they will share some of the responsibility with you for maintaining and securing it. So we haven't even got to security yet, but don't worry, we're on our way. So what is cloud native security? So my definition is that it's stuff that's specifically made to run in the cloud, specifically made for that. And like, okay, so let's give you a more advanced one. So this is one that I put together. So I used to work at Microsoft. I actually used to work with Frank and like a bunch of the other people that are part of the summit. And so it's kind of nice to see familiar faces. So I put this together from so many different amazing, incredibly brilliant human beings that I had the opportunity to work with, especially on the Microsoft Ignite tour. So then I actually got to spend like quality time with a lot of people. And so I came up with this definition from all these brilliant human beings. So it's applications and services that automate and integrate the concepts of continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, DevOps, microservices and microservices architecture. So that means APIs, serverless, and containers. And basically, like, this is stuff you could not do on-prem. And you can do things like Azure Stack, so you kind of like bring Azure home with you, and that's great. But still, you're doing cloud. Do you know what I mean? You're doing cloud. You're doing the new stuff. And so the idea of cloud native is not taking all your old legacy things and lifting and shifting it into the cloud. That's cool. That is good. You have way better reliability and resilience from then on. Right? But that's not cloud native. You're not taking advantage of all the awesome stuff. And that's okay. That's okay if you're doing that. But what I'm going to talk about in this talk is specifically cloud native and like the new ways that you can do things. And I do not mean to say that people supporting legacy apps are not fighting the good fight, because if anything, you have to fight a lot harder because you don't get to do all the fancy new tricks. And you're taking care of like an elderly application that's like 16 years old. You are still fighting the good fight. But I want to talk about the fun new stuff. Okay, so what is the difference between cloud and a traditional data center? So we're just going to talk about general differences, and then we're going to go into security differences. And then I'm going to make fun of myself probably a bit, and then I'm going to make fun of cloud providers a bit, because teasing and making fun of things is sort of one of my hobbies. And then we are going to wrap up. But when you think of a traditional data center, what do you think of? So this is where I would like you to be interactive. I would like you to share some of your thoughts about what you think of when you think of a traditional data center. In the chat, seriously. Simon does not need to read them out to me. I'm going to read them all later, though. You better believe it. And so my first thought is me as a junior penetration tester, having to go physically into data centers and being so cold. I remember my boss sent me once, and it was July. It was really hot where I live. So I was wearing this pretty dress, and I go into a data center, and I was only supposed to be there half an hour, and then it turned into I was there 6 hours in a dress, not wearing gloves, not wearing a hat, not even having a sweater, freezing. And so I think of loud, cold data centers. And so some of the other things that happened with a traditional data center were there was some manual patching. There was some manual management of patching. It was a lot of like, you can use like System Center and other things to deploy patches, but if things are missing, it didn't always tell you, like, imperfect. It's on premises, which means it's your responsibility. I worked somewhere once and we had a flood, and part of our data center was in our building, and our data center had a flood. Yeah, that sucked. I was one of those people that had my giant desktop on my desk because I hated crawling around underneath my desk, mostly because all my male colleagues would look at my butt. And I was just like, this is not cool. So I just one day redid it. And so my computer was okay, but a lot of people's computers were not okay because they were on the floor underneath their desk. And so when your data center is on premises, it is your responsibility, like physical responsibility. I also think of bare metal. So rather than now, like I don't have a specific computer, but I used to have computers and they all had names. There was Scully, Mulder, and Pamela. and Bessie. Bessie was one of my favorites. And like I'd have physical machines, bare metal, that I would run things on. I had to run my own network. So I only ran my own network a handful of times. Most of the times I was lucky and I could be on an internet and someone else ran it. But like running your own network is work. That's effort. Everything yourself, manual, stringing cables. Oh my gosh, those pictures when people put pictures on the internet of inside a data center and there's like a million cables and there's this awful mess, makes my heart break a little bit, makes me stressed, like cortisol comes out of me. You run your own air conditioning, your own power, your own backups, your own everything. And so a thing that a lot of people don't know about power is not created in this perfect amount of 120 or 220 volts. No, no, no. Power comes in surges and it's not this perfect thing. And so you have to regulate power if you're going to go to like this big, huge data center. And like, this is stuff you have to worry about a lot. You have to worry about failover. Oh, I've had so many things where like a data center just goes down and there's like no failover. And I thought we paid for that. You need an operations team and they have to be on call. And that is expensive. And you have to train them. You have to not only recruit them, but then you have to retain that staff, which means you have to be nice to them and give them training and hopefully give them like career opportunities so they want to keep working for you. You need to have an off-site business continuity plan, disaster recovery, or you should have one. I've definitely worked at places where our disaster recovery site was at the same place. And I was like, then what you're saying is there will be no recovery if we have disaster. You'll see over provisioning. This is a huge thing where you buy a lot extra just in case. And that as a person that owns a business, like a startup, oh my gosh, there are so many things that we have accidentally bought too much of because we weren't sure or you didn't get enough and then things crash. And so for the cloud, this is a thing you don't have to worry about necessarily anymore. And apps are deployed to a specific server. So I'm calling this photo app number 1. If you want to take a screenshot of this list, now's sort of your time. I don't personally love taking notes while I'm watching a talk. I love just watching and trying to listen and consume as much information as I can. So I took notes for you. But apps were deployed to specific servers. Like Bessie had this app. Pamela had this other app. And I remember this one guy, he's like, blah, 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 Pam. I'm like, please address her by her full name. Anyway, so what do you think of in cloud? So I would like you to put this into the chat, what you think of when you think of cloud. Because I had like, pretty wonderful introduction to cloud because like, I saw a little AWS, I saw a little this, a little that, but then I got to work at Microsoft and I got to have as much Azure as I wanted. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I have licenses to all the awesome stuff. And so my first foray into cloud was seeing the Security Center dashboard and how I could see, for the first time, I could see everything clearly. And I don't know how to explain, but that visibility and the fact that I could drill down to a specific box and fix it, I was just like, ah. It is pretty magical. So that's what I think of when I first think of cloud. And I'd love to hear what you think of when you think of cloud in the chat. So off premises, not your responsibility. So it is not unless you are a person that works at Microsoft and you happen to work in an Azure data center, it's going to be off premises for you, right? Like all the cloud customers, it's off premises, and that's nice. It sounds weird, but like giving up that responsibility and knowing that it's safely in someone else's hand is awesome. It means auto scaling. So no needing to buy things in advance. I know this is going to sound so silly, but like I wrote a book and people buy my book and people ask for signed books. So I have to ship books all the time. I have boxes and boxes and boxes of books in my house and a zillion of those like little bubble wrap envelope things. And then someone ordered the wrong size. So then I have like 50 of that one. And so I have like so much stuff and I have to over provision. I have to buy too many and slowly like let them all go one at a time, or 10 or 20 or 50 at a time, like people buy my book. And so auto scaling of technology, yes, because I used to have to do this with all of my servers too. Usually the cloud is internet available. In my entire career in tech since 1997, once the internet went down, but the intranet was still up, so we could still work. Every other time our intranet was also down, so your internal network. And then, once they realize like it's down, it's not coming back in a couple minutes. So they've sent us all to Starbucks or Timmy's. We've all recaffeinated and come back. It's still not up. They're like, just go home, have the rest of the day off. We don't want all of you software developers running around causing trouble. You can do infrastructure as a service. So I was on Azure Fun Bites yesterday with my friend Jay, and basically like the night before, I just did a whole bunch of infrastructure as code and built out a bunch of insecure demos. Then I attacked them because I'm a jerk like that. And then I could like demo to him, like, look, here we found this, so we did that. And I just asked for some infrastructure as a service, and then Azure just made it for me, and that's awesome. Apps can be on a whole bunch of different servers. Maintenance is not your problem. Like I said, centralized, beautiful, like everything you can see. And this one's really important, geographically distributed. I have worked at places where like, so I live in Canada, and, we're physically, geographically bigger than the United States, but compared to the United States, our country's empty. We have like, for like every 10, 12 Americans, there's one of us. And so we like we don't geographically distribute a lot of things. We are all like, where's the warmest part of Canada? I want to move there. And so, geographically distributed data centers that the cloud allows is magical, because we're mostly in just a couple of cities. And I don't mean to talk badly of us. It's just that that's where we do a lot of our technology stuff. We all gather in one place and generate the heat so we can stay warm. And that's a thing. Cloud data centers are lights out, which means they're run by robots. And I have to say, I think robots are very cool. But also it means that humans don't need to go in and things are just automated. And that's kind of amazing. And so here is like a little graph that I took off the internet from Quora.com. And if you wanted to take a screenshot of this, you totally could. But it only says some of the things we talked about. And really what I want to talk about is security, right? That's what I really want to talk about. And so what do you think of when you think of traditional data center security? Because I immediately think of security guards wandering around. I think of them having like a giant belt with, put your thoughts in the chat. I think of them having a radio so that they can call if they see someone that should not be there. And I have to say, like, being a pen tester, I've gotten into a lot of places where maybe I shouldn't have gotten in. And being, a pretty lady really helps. Like, hi, I'm supposed to be in this data center. Yeah, I'm supposed to get something from Ken. But what else do you think of? Because I think of zoning. So we used to have implied trust in data centers. So we would have, the data zone, and we would have all of the databases in there, and then we'd have a firewall around it. And then we would have, public access zones. So things where it connects to the internet. We'd have a demilitarized zone for our very serious stuff. We would just have like a bunch of firewalls. And everything inside each firewall would trust each other, and everything else you'd have to open up a hole. One of my old bosses used to refer to our firewall as the Swiss cheese. And I tried to explain to him that that was embarrassing. He should stop saying that. But then I went to Switzerland and they explained that what we in Canada call Swiss cheese is like one type of cheese. And they're like, that's not the best cheese at all. We have hundreds of cheeses that are better. And then they gave me a bunch of cheese when I visited. And I have to say that's probably the best speaker gift ever because I really like cheese. Manual patching, manual patch management, manually having to scan a bunch of areas to see which patches are missing, which configurations are wrong, what's questionable. Physical security, like I said, physical security guards. Generally using third-party software. So I have made a lot of money in my career from using Nessus and Nexpose, just like scanning infrastructure. They're like, do you want to, we'd like to hire you for a pen test on our infrastructure. I'm like, no, you don't. You just want me to do a VA scan. I'll charge you way less. And I will tell you the things you need to fix, and then you fix them. Life will be good. You don't want, first of all, you shouldn't hire me to do a physical, I'm a web app pen tester, or I was not you don't want that. I'm not. You maintain not only a trained operations team, but a security operations team as well. Money, extra money. You have many third-party monitoring and security tools. So this is your third one. And then cloud native. Applications and services that automate and integrate the concepts of DevOps, CI/CD, microservice architecture, APIs, serverless containers. It is not copying everything, your legacy applications, lifting and shifting them into the cloud. That's okay if you want to do it. Like, it is totally okay if you want to do that. Absolutely. But you're not doing cloud native. You're using the cloud to host your legacy apps. There is no shame in this. It is totally okay. But I want to talk about cloud native. So what do you think of when you think of cloud native? We've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to whiz through this. Zero trust. Just-in-time access control, closing all your ports all the time except when you need them. Automation for patching and patch management. Yes, automated VA scanning all the time. You don't have to set up agents. It just does it for you. Complete visibility. Threat monitoring. Monitoring of everything and then adding automated responses. Using CI/CD pipelines like Azure DevOps or, I was going to say GitHub Actions, but I guess because one company owns the other company, I kind of associate them. Having amazing resiliency so that your A and the CIA availability is always standing strong. Doing security as code. So like once you have people doing infrastructure as code and you have people releasing in pipelines, I'm going to do security as code for sure. There's just so many amazing things. There's more. There's DevSecOps. So I can add security tooling to your pipeline. I can automate a whole bunch of security checks. I can use serverless and logic apps to protect ourselves. So detecting something bad happened and then responding automatically. They call them playbooks in Azure. You can use the cloud native tools that come from your provider, like their SIEM, Sentinel, like native threat detection. Having native firewalls means like you just press a couple buttons and it's implemented and it actually just works. It means less heroics, which means happier staff, and happier staff means less turnover. And that's the most important thing. And so I want to tell you one last important thing, and that is that this responsibility of securing your systems is still shared between you and whoever your provider is, whether it's Microsoft or someone else. It is a shared responsibility. And so you see like your vendor on one side, so physical assets, data center operations, cloud infrastructure. But then on the other side, what you need to secure is if you have virtual machines and networks, you need to make good choices. If you have apps and workloads, again, you need to make Like, you need to write secure code. And like, I know that I'm the person that teaches secure coding. And so that's why it's like, oh, well, you know, she blah, blah, blah. But you can learn this in many places. There are books, there are articles, there are so many ways to learn. And so I'm going to give you a couple resources. So Microsoft Learn, there are a whole bunch of different awesome things. I know I'm right at the cusp. So take a screenshot of this, some awesome books about DevOps and cloud native and about security. If you are a woman or a person who identifies as a woman or non-binary, I have this international nonprofit where we want basically women and non-binary folks to get to meet each other and be friends. I have an online free community at community.wehackpurple.com. It's all free. You can just join, meet people. There's articles, videos, conversations, events. Every Monday on Twitter, I do Cyber Mentoring Monday. And basically, I use this hashtag to help connect people with professional mentors. And the last resource is me. She Hacks Purple on every single platform like Twitter, Instagram, all the places. And I have a YouTube. I have all the things. And with that, I want to thank you. And I want to thank the Azure Summit for having me. And I'm sorry I am 1 minute over. And thank you so very much for having me.